Hey there. Before we dive in, just a quick heads up. This episode explores America's deep-rooted relationship with guns and how they have become just so intertwined with our national identity and culture. And when we recorded this one, I guess it was late last summer, it was already fairly complex for me because I'm very pro-gun control and I've always been fairly wary of firearms. But given recent tragic events in Minnesota, this episode might hit a little differently for some. So if an objective conversation about guns and gun culture feels a little too much or overwhelming, believe me, understood. I get it. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and give you a heads up before we jump in. And you look fantastic, by the way. Hey, there you are. Great to see you. Come on in.
Welcome to Alive.
Okay. Here's a question for you today. You ready?
How do you feel about guns?
Yeah. I think it's nearly impossible not to have a strong reaction to that question. There's tea if you want tea. I'm making tea. So here's something that might surprise you. I am a gun owner. Yeah. Believe me, no one is as surprised that Steve owns a gun as Steve. Believe me. But here's how that happened. So 2 summers ago, I was standing right out here, and I heard a little cry coming from the woods, and an itty-bitty, teeny-weeny, adorable little fawn with its spots still on, the thing was like this big, comes zipping out of the woods, pursued by a whole-ass bear. A black bear. Now, I live up here on this mountain, and I've seen bears before. You know, I've seen them in the woods from a safe distance, and honestly, they look kind of cute. They're like, oh, hey, Steve, nice weather we're having today, or whatever. They look gentle almost. I had no idea that they wanted to murder and kill itty-bitty, beautiful little tiny fawns, but apparently they do. And this thing was like 20 feet away from me, max, and it was looking at me. And I clapped at it, and I said, hey, bear, get out of here, bear. Nothing. It just stared at me. I had one of those like air horns. I emptied the whole thing on this bear. Nothing. Just stared at me. What became abundantly clear was that this bear was not afraid of me at all. Here you go. What was also clear is that I was very afraid of it. And I asked my neighbors about this, and they all said the same thing. They all said, hey, Steve, cool story. You own a shotgun, right? So the next day I went out and bought a shotgun. And just like that, I was a very unlikely gun owner, which made sense because bear, right? Here's where it gets wild. Last year, I went out and bought another gun. I bought a little, small, .22 pew-pew rifle. Not because I needed it. Simply because I thought it would be fun. What the hell is that about? Like, who am I? I never for a moment considered myself a gun guy. I mean, I grew up kind of around guns, but I spent most of my life in New York City. And I basically believed that guns were mostly unnecessary and even reckless, you know? And yet here I am now, a dude with 2 guns in a safe upstairs.
And I can't help but feel that that says something about me, something totally new. I can't help but feel that owning guns has changed at least a part of my identity. Because guns are identity markers, right? They're kind of bumper stickers almost in a way. They're identity markers for us individually, but also culturally, also nationally, if you think about it. And today, I'm wondering, how did that happen? How did guns become so central to our culture? What do you think? Interesting. You know what? Let's go. Okay, today's guest is Stephen Gutowski. He is the founder of The Reload, an independent publication dedicated to clear, fact-driven reporting on firearms in America. A veteran journalist and firearms instructor, he's a frequent CNN guest. His work has been cited across the political spectrum for its rigor, its fairness. He approaches one of the most polarizing issues in American life without slogans, without talking points, insisting on sober, impartial examination of how guns shaped our culture and shape our laws and our lives. I am fully aware that this is a conversation that often generates more heat than light, but he is committed to bringing clarity and context, which is exactly why I wanted to talk to. Oh, he's here. Here we go. Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you today. Thank you so much for stopping by the porch here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is owning a gun such a defining aspect of personality, of identity? And why does it make me feel like I have a foot in a culture that I don't belong in? And I'm wondering, how did that happen in America? Like, how did firearms become so deeply woven into our national identity and our personal identities? I'm looking for like a historical context of the gun in the United States.
There's a lot of different reasons why people might own guns. And so it gets fairly complex, right? There's additionally a whole historical context in America, especially around firearms ownership, because it's not just about hunting or just about personal self-defense. There's also a political aspect to it, or political philosophy behind it, that is fairly unique in America, because as a country, we were founded on an armed revolution, and a lot of people hold that those core values very closely. And one of the ways to express that for a lot of people is to buy firearms, to own firearms, and they buy into this concept of that an armed populace is harder to oppress, right? It's resistant towards tyranny. And that's a huge part of our entire founding ethos. Our founding mythos is about resisting the tyranny of King George, right? And so that's one thing I think that really sets apart America as a culture from a lot of other countries where you don't have that same history. And I think it also gets to another part of sort of American culture, which is this idea of rugged individualism, that even if you're not particularly into firearms, it's an even more pervasive, I think, idea that Americans have about themselves, that they want to be self-reliant, that they want to be prepared. And that is a big part of gun culture as well.
I'm just trying to drill down on what exactly that impetus at that stage in American history was that we carried through. I think it is as much to do with the rugged idea as it is with the individual idea. There's a sense of, I want to be perceived as rugged. I want to be rugged because that ruggedness meets my level of threat perception. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and look, America has is unique in another sense here as well. You had the revolution on the east coast of the country, and guns were associated with the militia and throwing off the tyranny of England, and all these positive attributes for why people wanted to have firearms. But then there was also the move west and the frontier life that Americans really idolized that as well, going out into the wilderness and carving out a plot of land for yourself and your family to live off of. And that, required you to be much more self-reliant, and firearms are a big part of that as a tool of survival than a tool of, liberty or what have you. But those two things are connected, and they developed in over our history as America, as we've expanded westward, and people really idealized that aspect of American culture, of the frontiersmen, of the settlers, and that also plays into why, what, especially people who own guns, how they view them, right? It's not, as you mentioned, just a tool, even though it is a tool, even though it is a practical implement. It also carries a lot of cultural weight here in America that it doesn't necessarily carry in other parts of the world.
Okay, world, I get it. Protein and fiber are very, very important. Fine, but I'm not going to restructure and rebuild my entire diet around that stuff. I'm very busy. I'm looking for simple wins. And Hero Bread is exactly that. It's basically an upgrade. I can eat all the stuff that I already love, like bagel sandwiches and avocado toast and my beloved PB and J, but Hero Bread has 0 to 5 grams net carbs, 0 sugar, and it's high in fiber, and you'll never notice you're missing anything. What surprised me most, though, is the texture. It's moist, fluffy, and it tastes like real bread. Not close enough to real bread, but like real bread. So, bottom line, no compromises, just flavor. This year, hit your goals without giving up your favorite bready dishes. Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code Steve at checkout. That's Steve at HERO.co. Hello, and welcome to another installment of Just a Thought with Steve Burns, brought to you by BetterHelp. This is part of the show where I just kind of sit down in a chair and share with you some of the thoughts that have been rattling around in my mind. No solutions, no 10-step plans or anything like that. Just a thought. So anyway, lately, I've been thinking that the holidays, and in particular Valentine's Day, seems almost specifically created to make me want to self-immolate in the greeting cards aisle. Do you ever feel like that? Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of this background messaging, people clinking champagne glasses, the heart-shaped box thing, prefix menus, always for two. It all creates this low-grade vibe that's everywhere, that somehow being without a partner is a problem. Like it's an acute medical condition, like something's very, very wrong. And in my mind, boy, that can really create some negative thought patterns, right? Like, am I doing something wrong? Am I somehow behind? Am I out of sync with the rhythm of the natural world? And then that creates like some shame, and also makes me wonder if all of the solitude I have is really just sort of loneliness. And I don't know, that can get really heavy. And when it does, for me, I find it extremely useful to talk to someone, a professional. I mean, because you and I talk all the time in this way, and we listen in this way, but what we do here in this cold barn is not therapy. A therapist is a professional who you talk to live, who can help you untangle those negative thoughts and help you see those patterns that you might not be able to see yourself, right? This space is about asking questions. Therapy is about doing the work. Anyway, So here's what I'm thinking. Maybe being unpartnered is not necessarily a problem that needs to be solved. I don't know. I mean, it's just a thought. Anyway, thanks for listening. Let's get back to that interview.
But I've always wondered, and you can tell me what the stats are on this. Is that even applicable anymore? Because the British had guns, and then we also had guns. So that was guns versus guns. Don't governments now have robot drones and all sorts of spaceships and all sorts of things that make conventional firearms sort of not something that you could even really retaliate with?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the debates I think we still see a lot in modern America over the efficacy of an armed populace. Like, is it really still possible to, prevent tyranny when the government has so much more advanced weaponry than the weapons that we have available to civilians? And you even see it with former President Joe Biden has made remarks along those lines. Even at the Supreme Court, we had conservative Justice Antonin Scalia during the U.S. v. Heller decision, the one that was a landmark decision that said the Second Amendment protects an individual right to own guns, and it struck down D.C.'s handgun ban. But in there, you had Scalia writing about how the prefatory clause of the Second Amendment is separate from the operatory clause, and because the Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the freedom of or to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so it talks about that one of the purposes of people being armed is to keep the state free, to secure a free state. And he said, well, he was talking about in America, we have a ban on new sales of automatic weapons. And, he's talking about how that's not necessarily implicated. And he's kind of rejecting the idea that, he's kind of questioning the idea that you could still have armed civilians resist tyranny today with the disparity between the government's arms and civilian arms. But, and so it is something that's questioned. It's something, people have a live debate about whether this is true. I would say the only thing I guess I would say there is, like, you can look at the most advanced military in the world, the United States military, and just look at how we've performed in some of these roles of occupying other countries over the last 30, 40, 50 years, and see that just because you have the most advanced military weaponry doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to prevail.
There's another issue that I've always had with this, where I've always not understood it, is, okay, so if you're saying the government, any government might want to tyranny me, so I need these guns to protect myself from the government. But eventually they could have ways of creating tyranny that don't even involve guns, that don't even really involve conventional weapons at all. That could just involve information, that could involve lasers or brown notes or all sorts of technologies. So then you need another technology, and then they have another technology, and then you need another technology. That's just a logical fallacy. That's infinite regress. Right. That ends with everyone with a laser cannon mounted on a space tiger or something weird. It's just not practical. At least it seems to me. That way of thinking seems illogical to me.
So there certainly is a level of sort of a preparedness spiral where you can kind of go down a rabbit hole. And you definitely see this, I think, in the gun carry world. I carry a firearm, and it's easy to think yourself into, well, what if I get into this unlikely situation where I need to use my firearm for self-defense, right? It's not likely to happen. I've never had it happen personally, and I've been carrying for years. Okay, well, what if my main gun malfunctions? Well, maybe I should carry a backup gun. And you can, you can look at real world examples. I don't, but some people do.
Wow. I see. Now this is fascinating to me, Stephen. The idea of, okay, I'm going to open carry or conceal carry this weapon. And then to say, actually, if that one fails, I need a backup parachute on my ankle.
Right.
Right. I got to wonder if that person takes care of their health, for example, because there could be other threats to their life that they are not so careful about, so cautious about it, do not have safeguards in place for their daily life as they're walking around. I got to wonder what is special about the threat that you can solve with a gun. Like, again, I think this goes back to, why is it such a potent symbol? Why do people place that at the core of their identity? Because it is different than other threats, right? I wonder if it's about the simplicity of it. It's about there's no arguing, there's no nuance anymore, there's no discussion. It's a black and white solution to the perceived threat. Right?
Yeah,
it's an on-off button.
I think there's some truth to that, right? If you're prone to that kind of preparedness thinking, it can lead certainly to a rabbit hole. And I think you have to, you see that as well going back to your original point about kind of, well, if the idea is to resist tyranny and the government has more and more advanced weapons, are we all just going to get to a point where we're all just armed to the teeth all the time?
Why do you carry? What's the threat you perceive?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's not so much about, I think, and look, it's going to be different for everyone, but I think people who approach carrying a firearm responsibly do it, again, just out of concern for what could happen. Not that something is likely to happen, but that it has happened before to other people. And if you were in that situation, you would want to be able to do something about it, to protect yourself or those you care about around you, right? That's the main concept of why I carry and why I think most people carry a firearm.
How did the gun become, like, how did it go from a tool to almost a sacred object that symbolizes so powerfully our identity that we cannot infringe it at all? When it, in my perception in talking to you, doesn't always match its utility. It doesn't always match the threat level. It's not always the answer, but yet it's always protected as such. Makes me, I'm not casting a judgment on that. I'm just saying there's something about this as it relates to who we think we are as people, as a country, that there's a sacredness to the way we treat this tool that I've never fully understood, and it's real. I'm really curious about that, and it's really fascinating to me. What do you do you think America is unique in this regard?
I do think it is unique. We do own a lot more firearms as civilians in the United States than anywhere else in the world. We own more firearms as American civilians than the rest of the world's militaries combined.
Wait, say that again?
People don't really,
say that again?
People don't understand the scale of American gun ownership. We as civilians own more firearms, small arms, than the entire world's militaries combined, according to the Small Arms Survey. The scale of American gun ownership is much beyond what people think it is. We buy more firearms in a month as civilians than the entire Marine Corps has, for instance, in its stockpile.
I heard you say recently that it's $1 million a month.
Yes, it's a million a month. It's actually down significantly. But yes, according to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is the industry's trade group, they do a analysis of the FBI's background check system. And yes, it was $1 million a month for like 5 years straight. We've actually been on a bit of a downturn in as far as the gun industry is concerned and the number of sales. But even at the level we're at today, it's beyond what people think it is. There's a lot more firearms in the United States than people understand.
What you said, that blew my mind, that civilians in the United States own more guns than the militaries of the world collectively. Yes. That's wild, man. Do we have a number? What's our estimate for how many guns there are in the United States?
Yeah, the most recent estimate from Small Arms Survey is a little old at this point, but it was over 400 million, which is, this is where you hear people will say there's more firearms than people in the United States, and that's true.
Okay, wow. So there are more guns than human people, and there are 400 million guns. That's wild. How does that break down? How many of those are pistols? How many of those are automatic weapons? How many of those are just for hunting? How many of those do cops own? Like what's the breakdown of those?
Yeah. So if you look at that Small Arms Survey, which is, it's a nonprofit that tries to put together estimates of all the guns in the world, right? And who owns them, whether civilians or law enforcement or military. And the civilian number is 400 million in the U.S. The number of all military small arms, that doesn't include jets and tanks and aircraft carriers, right? Just right. The guns, to be clear. But they put that number at 122 million. So American civilians own almost 4 times the number of, I guess it's a little over 3 times the number of guns that all of the world's militaries have. And then if you look at law enforcement, global law enforcement, they put that estimate at 22.7 million. So it's really not close. That's for all the law enforcement in all the world, compared to just American civilians at 400 million. And you could even drill down on that and say the National Shooting Sports Foundation is the gun industry's trade group. They do the estimate every so often of how many AR-15s and AK-47s civilians own. Now, these are semi-automatic versions of these guns, to be clear. The National Firearms Act makes it much more difficult to own the fully automatic versions of machine guns, but you can own the semi-automatic where each trigger pull fires 1 round.
You can get around that.
And they estimate, well, there's techniques for like pulling the trigger faster. There's things like bump stocks, which were, controversial after the Las Vegas shooting. But for the most part, most people own just the semi-automatic version of these firearms. But even still, and that's just one kind of rifle. Now, the AR-15 is the most popular rifle in the United States, which is also one of the most controversial. It's shown up in a lot of high-profile mass shootings, right? And so it's become a very hotly debated firearm in the United States. Some states ban them, their sale, but most states allow them. And there was a federal ban from 1994 to 2004, but that sunsetted and is no longer in effect, though some people want to bring it back, of course. But if we're just looking at how many of those guns are there? Well, the National Shooting Sports Foundation's most recent estimate says there's 25 million.
Wow.
So that's more AR-15s and AK-47s in the United States and similar firearms than the entire world's police force has in their of all firearms that they own. So,
wow.
Pretty big disparity.
Okay, so imagine you're on a first date and you think it's going well. You don't want to just ask questions about the weather or just make small talk. You want to get to the real questions, right? The important stuff that will reveal whether or not this could go somewhere. Well, the same goes if you're hiring. You want to get the most important questions early to see if someone's actually right for the role. That's why you need ZipRecruiter. When you post a job, ZipRecruiter suggests screening questions that help you zero in on the best candidates faster. And when I say faster, I mean that. That's the best thing about ZipRecruiter. They have that matching technology that right away puts you in contact with the candidates who already check the boxes you need. So ask key questions and hire faster with ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/alive. That's ZipRecruiter.com/alive. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. Every year I tell myself that I'm going to be a dude who plans his meals. And every year I fail at becoming a dude who plans his meals. That's why Marley Spoon is so important to me. Some nights I feel like cooking. Some nights I just want something easy. And some nights I want something immediately. Marley Spoon adapts with me, right? And I love that I get like over 100 recipes every week. Some of it's comfort food, some of it's light, and some of it's classic. And it's all very well balanced, and the ingredients are awesome. And when I really don't feel like cooking, which is sometimes, they have these amazing prepared meals, which are clutch. You just heat, eat, and done. Ooh, and they even started doing these tray bake dinners, you know? You just kind of slide them in there. It's all in one tray. And then poof, it is done. And it's really, really good. Marley Spoon makes eating well doable. So this year, fast track your way to eating well with Marley Spoon. Head to marleyspoon.com/offer/alive for up to 25 free meals. That's right, up to 25 free meals with Marley Spoon. That's marleyspoon.com/offer/alive for up to 25 free meals.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
February is not easy for one particular reason, and that's that it makes it seem like everyone has their relationship status completely sorted out and squared away, whether they're dating or in a long-term relationship or just started dating. And if you're not someone whose relationship status is completely squared away, then you're doing something wrong. And that can be a pretty heavy feeling. So I hear. But therapy can help you sort through that kind of thing, help you figure out what it is you actually do want and what might be getting in your way as far as relationships goes. And BetterHelp makes it easier than ever to get started. Their therapists are fully licensed in the US and work under a very strict code of conduct, and they do the matching for you with a short questionnaire. And if the first match isn't right, you can switch at any time. They've got over 30,000 therapists, and they've got a 4.9 out of 5 rating with over 1.7 million reviews. That's amazing. So sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/SteveAlive. That's betterhelp.com/SteveAlive.
I'm not good at math, but I'm just crunching the numbers in my brain. That's got to mean that a lot of people who own guns own a shitload of guns, right? Mm-hmm. Like a lot of guns. Let's say I'm someone who, as you said before, my threat perception, the reason that I have a gun, specifically an automatic weapon, semi-automatic weapon like an AR-15, is related to this threat of tyranny or related to I'm going to have to fight with it, right? Why would I want 5 of them? You know, so it's
a good question.
The sheer towering quantity of guns feels more like an obsession than a rational reaction. I mean, we have 4 times the world's military combined. This feels wildly unnecessary to me. Well, I've never heard that stat before. That's just my gut reaction to it.
Yeah, no, and look, I think people don't have a very good grasp of exactly how many guns Americans own, and so that's why I bring up the stats like that, because this I'm sure this will sound weird for somebody who doesn't own guns, but the hobby aspect of it reminds me most of working on my car or my Jeep and building my computer. Very similar sort of experience to it. And when I built my computer, I built it from parts that I went out and got because I'm a little bit nerdy on that front. I like the tech stuff. I like building it with my hands. And when I work on my Jeep, it's the same thing. I want to be able to you have that mechanical side of the hobby and guns are just like that. There's a mechanical side to it where you are physically building the firearms, and there's sort of the parts, picking out the parts to go together in the way that you want them. There's a lot of that aspect to it that I think if you're not a gun owner, or even if you're not a hobbyist gun owner, that you might not perceive right away. And so that can explain why people have these collections.
I get that.
And why a lot of people might have them, not just a few people who are like really, really obsessively into it or are doomsday preppers or whatever. There's normal people will also have these. There's reasons that they get into it too.
I fully understand that. I mean, as an object, they're really interesting. My favorite part so far of owning these guns is cleaning them. Like, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Yeah. Like, it comes apart and you can do this. And
which sounds strange to a lot of people, that it would be fun to clean your gun.
It probably sounds strange to a lot of people to hear Steve from Blue's Clues talking about cleaning his shotgun. It sounds strange to me to say it, to be honest. So we've identified the gun as a huge cultural marker for the United States, and our relationship to guns does indeed make us unique on this earth in many ways that I didn't even realize before we started this conversation. But it's also an identity marker, and it does kind of bifurcate things, right? People do tend to fall passionately on either side of gun ownership, really, and gun regulation. What do you think are a few things that both sides get wrong about each other?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of skepticism of motivations that you'll see, especially in the political realm, in the political debates over this stuff, where, on one side you have like gun rights activists who just think that those on the other side are trying to strip them of their rights, that they're coming after their rights, that they don't understand them, and that they despise them, and that they're coming for them, essentially. They're trying to take away something that they view as a human right, that this right to own firearms, and that they, as we've gone over here, view as part of their identity of who they are. And then on the other side, I think you have a lot of gun control activists who think that gun owners are callous, right? They don't care about the harm being inflicted with firearms, that they aren't interested in trying to solve that issue at all, that they're uncaring as well. So I think that's where you see a lot of breakdown, and that's not, of course, contained to the gun debate in the United States, right? This is something that we see in a lot of different issues, and just talking past each other and not having any empathy for the other person's point of view as well. Not that having empathy for someone's point of view means you need to change your own, but I definitely think that's lacking oftentimes in these sorts of fights.
Amen, man. I couldn't agree more. Stephen, this was awesome, and this was really interesting. This was a very, very rational conversation, and very, very informative. And it went way longer than I thought it would. I apologize. I hope we didn't take up too much of your afternoon. But I was learning a lot.
I enjoyed it.
And anyway, man, thank you so much for coming by. And thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Bye. Okay. That was very rational, very reasonable, highly informative. I learned a lot of stuff. I wrote down, the gun is more than a tool. It is a symbol of cultural identity. Yeah, clearly, right? The plunger is a tool. We do not bequeath it to our grandchildren, for example. Another thing is we're so drawn. One of the reasons we're so drawn to guns is because of how they make us feel, not just because of what they do. They elicit feelings. They make us feel safe. They make us feel powerful, for example. The last thing I wrote down is there are 400 million firearms in the United States. And that is nearly 4 times the number of guns that all the world's militaries have combined. And that, I mean, yeah, let's go outside. Okay, so guns clearly mean a lot of things to a lot of people. They're sport, recreation, they're protection, they're survival. But culturally, they're a symbol of power. Power over King George, power over the West, power over each other, power over bears. And so, yeah, I mean, I get that. That makes a form of sense to me. I can see why someone would shape their identity around such a potent symbol of power. It's not for me, though. How about you? What do you shape your identity around? Yeah, I can see that. Well, listen, thanks for coming by. Thanks for doing this with me. It really means a lot. And you look great. Alive with Steve Burns is a Lemonada Media original. If you haven't subscribed to Lemonada Premium yet, now's the perfect time. You can listen to the show completely ad-free, plus you'll unlock exclusive bonus content from me as I reflect on this episode. Just press subscribe on Apple Podcasts, head to lemonadapremium.com to subscribe on any other app, or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership. That's lemonadapremium.com. Alive is hosted by me, Steve Burns, and produced by Jeremy Slutskin. Our editor is Christopher Champion Morgan. Our associate producer is Akshaz Tharabailu. Audio engineering by James Sparber. Lemonada's SVP of weekly programming is Steve Nelson. Executive producers are Jessica Cordover-Kramer, Stephanie Whittles-Wax, and me. We'll see you next week. And you look great, by the way.